Welcome back to The Circle, the podcast where we go all in on men's work, embodiment practices, and personal growth from our queer perspective. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to share your favorite episode, leave us a review, and subscribe. And if you have a question about anything you've heard us talk about, please send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And now on to today's show. What happens when the pain we carry isn't tied to a single injury, but to a lifetime of subtle ruptures, chronic overwhelm, or never feeling fully safe? And how do we begin to heal when the very systems designed to help us might not even recognize what we're going through? Today, we're joined by John Horton-Young, a psychotherapist who specializes in treating complex trauma and dissociative identity disorder. He's also the founder of the Complex Trauma Initiative, which helps survivors access the specialized care they need. Together, we'll explore what sets complex trauma apart from other forms of trauma, why it's so often misunderstood, and what healing can look like when we slow down, build trust, and meet the body where it actually is. Tim, John, are you ready to go all in?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. John, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to The Circle.
Thank you for having me.
So for those that may not be familiar, can you help us understand the difference between what we think of as trauma and what's referred to as complex trauma?
Sure.
And what makes it distinct, and why does that distinction matter?
First of all, the distinction between trauma and complex trauma. There's basically three elements of trauma that makes it more into the realm of complex trauma. One is repeated trauma over a period of time. So trauma we think of as single events, maybe multiple events, but not repeated over a long period of time. The other part is relational trauma, or I heard a term that I like even better is betrayal trauma, which is, you have a relationship, especially a parent relationship that is supposed to care for you, protect you, and instead they violate that. And so the word betrayal, I think, is a little more powerful and speaks to it more. The other part of it is developmental trauma. So the way complex trauma appears most of the time in this culture, I'd say 90% of what I see, is childhood trauma. So you think of childhood abuse and neglect, clearly has those first two elements. The other real important element is how it affects you developmentally. So it is affecting, as you're forming your view of the world and how it works in relationships, is being centered around these traumas that keep happening. So those are sort of like the big three that differentiate it from more adult trauma. When you're older, you've developed, you've got more coping skills, and they're may not be as repetitive over a period of time. You look at a war vet, that's a long time and a lot of trauma, right? It's more from an adult perspective, which helps.
For our queer community, I'm curious, this idea of something happening over and over, this repeated exposure to this thing, and it feels like a lot of queer people would have that experience with the messaging that they're not good enough or that they're inherently flawed. So do you find that complex trauma is something in our community because of that history and the tendency?
Very much so. Very much so. A lot of people go look at it from perspective that just being gay in the society and getting to a stage in your development when you're, I don't know, people realize when they're 8, 12, 15, it's that period that you're developing. And so it is got that developmental portion of it. The other thing is the relational part. I mean, and what's interesting is it's not always as blatant as like abuse, neglect that you see, because it's more, I don't feel connected to you people around me. You people are saying things to me that are damaging when you're supposed to be protecting me and having my back. And you're saying, well, queer people are this. You're using derogatory terms. You're doing all of making jokes. And you're traumatizing these kids. So it contains all these pieces of complex trauma.
Beautiful. That feels like what I was hearing you say, and I feel like it's a shared experience in our community.
Yeah. That it's not just a one instance where my dad said all queers are bad.
Right.
It's something that, in my experience, I heard repeatedly,
over and over
again, and then you mix that in with other types of abuse or neglect, right? And now we're just like layering it on top of each other and creating more complexity in this trauma.
And plus, for a lot of queer individuals, their behaviors may be different. And so parents see things, especially fathers, that they find threatening to their masculinity or their worldview. And now you're getting into verbal abuse, physical abuse. Go out, be a man, right? Let me smack you around, then I'll make a man out of you.
I'll toughen you up.
I'll toughen you up.
This is like an act of love is actually like a real betrayal, as you said.
Right.
You're supposed to be protecting me, and now you're sort of beating me up, either verbally or physically, in the pursuit of me getting more like you or something. It's like, it's kind of a wild thing that I know certainly happened to me, and I know happened to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're supposed to protect me. Now you're for my own good, embarrassing me or humiliating me or, degrading me or whatever you're doing.
Right. And what's interesting about that, Tim, is that now you're getting into identity confusion, which is a symptom of complex PTSD, can often be identity confusion. Am I gay or am I straight? I'm being told I should be this when I'm trying to be that. And who am I? It gets lost. I mean, I have to tell people being queer is all about taking who you are and shoving it down so far that even you can't find it anymore. When we're talking about abuse and neglect, and we're talking about things like development of parts of self through trauma, there is a level of identity confusion. Am I the kid who was beaten? Am I the happy kid who was not beaten? Am I the angry kid who wants to punch people? Am I the kid who runs and hides? All of these parts moving in and out that we have various levels of awareness of are moving in and out, confusing who we are. On top of that, you've got this other aspect of identity confusion, and that's taking who I am and purposely repressing it and having to build a different identity, almost in a conscious way, where a lot of the traumas, this is happening in an unconscious way.
And this is all very relatable, right? Because I'm starting to see a lot of my own histories and like how repeated things, as you're talking, like which identity am I most associated with or disassociated with?
Right.
Am I the scared little boy? Am I the boy that is putting on a mask, pretending like everything is okay in order to maintain my safety? Right? Like, I'm fine, everything's fine, right? When in the back, it's not fine at all.
Right.
Right. And so all these things. And so I'm just curious, like, how does complex trauma start to show up in our childhoods, in our bodies, in our body language, in the way that we present ourselves to the world, in our overall just behaviors? So how does it start to show up?
Might be helpful with that is to understand the concept of how we develop parts of self.
Okay.
So I try to do this as quick and concise as possible. Like I was saying earlier, there's a reason we call it complex trauma because there's all kinds of moving pieces to this. But let's take a 5-year-old kid who has a dad who's, probably a great dad most of the time. Then he drinks and he becomes violent, verbally and physically abusive, right? So you got this 5-year-old kid and a 5-year-old perspective on the world and still trying to learn what is love, what is my place in the world, what is the world, right? And you've got this person who's great to me, then all of a sudden starts pummeling me or verbally, physically. So what happens is I've still got to be this kid that functions every day and go to school, but I'm getting beaten. So that has to be separated, right? It's almost like, and when I talk about parts, I'm talking about neurological networks that are getting built. And when I talk about dissociation, it's all about awareness and managing awareness between parts of self and of what's happening. So this kid who's a happy kid gets sort of cast up. Sometimes I'll hear it described as I was up in the corner of the room watching it. So I'm just seeing it. I know it. Right.
Been there.
Yeah. But I'm not feeling
Yep.
it. Another part of me is taking it, right? This almost like a screenshot of that kid is saved to take the abuse. Then all these, what we call protector parts, start jumping in. And they will start doing things like anger will come in, right? Well, that has to get repressed because that's not going to serve you well to attack your dad. So a nice dissociative bubble gets wrapped around that neural network and it gets repressed. Running. I may have tried to run at some point. Dad didn't like that and really came at me. That has to be shoved aside. And maybe collapse is the one that will actually work in this situation. So I'll just go limp and just take the beating, right? And then I can wake up tomorrow and that kid who took the abuse has been dissociated down. These protective parts have been dissociated down. So now I can go and say hi to dad and give him a hug and have this loving father, which, by the way, you've also got perpetrator parts, good dad, bad dad, because I can't hold those two things at the same time. And I can go to school and function. And then these parts may, to your question about how they appear, they can appear as early as the bully, right? That angry part, it gets to express itself against a weaker target. right? Because it got repressed during the abuse when it really wanted to just take charge, right? And the reason I said 5 is below the age of 8, that process starts to look more like dissociative identity disorder. These parts are so thickly dissociated, if you want to look at it that way. These bubbles are so thick that they start developing their own identity. We kind of look at that as, well, that's what parts are. Well, parts are also, as you get older and you're able to cope more, you know more. I can understand conflicts more. Like I got some concept of people can be good and bad when I didn't have it when I was a kid. And so the dissociative barriers are thinner. So we all develop these parts. Even people who don't have complex trauma, who may have traumas when they're younger or even in their teens or even in their 20s, you'll still develop these parts because it helps to do, you said something about things being hidden, right? And that's a perfect example. It's hiding things because what you have to do is you have to remember it and you have to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll remember, you'll get cast up in the ceiling. So I'll remember what happened. Some other part is remembering how it felt, how I looked at the world, what it did to me in a lot of ways. That's a drastically simplified version of what can happen. And the reason I point that out is, and you know that is, I want to make sure anybody doing this work doesn't feel invalidated as to how complex their system is in the work that they're doing.
Absolutely.
I respect that. I just want to level set for conversation.
Well, so this separation that you were just describing of the pieces of ourselves, done from what I'm hearing you say, mainly for survival. Do you think that plays a role in, as adults, our relationship to our own body? I've noticed in men's work, sometimes men having a hard time coming into relationship with their own body in particular ways, specifically with like sensations connected to emotions. Do you think that's partly because there had to be like the honing of the skill of separating those things?
Yeah.
100%.
Honing of skill, it's interesting because these things are sort of like automated processes. Like when we talk about even the queer community, how they will take who they are and repress it, there's more of a conscious effort to that, especially younger kids are not doing this consciously, right? It's a skill that gets built and that the brain it's all of our minds have this ability to protect us. And it's really kind of amazing how good a job it does. But to your example, Eric, about I was up here and I didn't feel it, right? That's a separation of the body from this part of me that functions in the world. So a lot of times they will not feel things or they will experience pain in a much different way than other people will. I always hesitate to separate brain and body. I mean, it's one thing, right? And that's sometimes where we get tripped up. But they will feel numb. They won't feel as much pain, physical pain. Physiologically, their bodies can change. Often you'll do things as you may have experienced in any people get massages. That's when they get touched in the right place. And that can set off these memories and can be very triggering. But it is hard for them to get in touch with their body because their body becomes dangerous. Like if I'm in my body, that means this part gets activated. I'm being hurt physically, verbally.
I'm feeling the things that I was trying not to feel.
Absolutely.
So, with Body Keeps the Score and Waking the Tiger, all these ideas, when you're working with people who are working through complex trauma, how do you start to bring them into a safe and healthy relationship with their body so they can start to connect to that without being overwhelmed?
Well, that gets really complicated.
Well, okay, let's get into it. Yeah.
You have to be really careful with the defenses that are there. Because if I start going towards, and every once in a while I'll make this mistake. Like if I'm working with somebody whose trauma may be a little less complex, I may say to them, where do you feel that in your body? That emotion, where do you feel it in your body? And have them focus on that part of their body. Well, there are certain people, if you did that, that could be so triggering that they can't tolerate it. So we have this thing called a therapeutic window, right? So it's, am I feeling enough of the distress to be in here, but not so much of the stress that I'm getting re-traumatized and I'm not doing any good? Window of tolerance. Trying to maintain that. A lot of times I don't want them in touch with their body yet, depending. Or I don't want them in touch with certain parts of their body because they're not ready for it. And so often what I'll do is try to access that part, that kid, that whatever part was taking the abuse, and I'll work with them and make that a little more, work towards processing what it is that they were experiencing.
So if there's a person who is, as you described, in a place where starting to work with their body, it might be too soon, or might be re-traumatizing or triggering for them. What does their day-to-day life look like? They are moving through the world in their body and having an experience of it. What are some of the challenges that come with that from your perspective?
So a lot of them. And, when you look at the body and emotions, those operate similar. So like I'm feeling things in my body, it triggers things. The same thing with I can't tolerate emotions, right? So day to day, frankly, sometimes I have them use that dissociation. It's a powerful tool. It's not our enemy, right? None of these things are our enemy. They're defenses. They're trying to protect us. So if somebody's experiencing, I can't tolerate somebody touching me, right? Okay, so don't get touched. Or can that part of you, I'll find various ways to take that part and have it dissociate itself because I have to function. And so we have these parts, we call them apparently normal parts because they help us function normally and they don't feel often they don't feel a lot of their body. They don't feel a lot of emotion. And sometimes they're the people who come off kind of seemingly cold, right? But that's because all of the body sensations and the emotions are too much.
Let me just make sure I'm hearing you correctly. It sounds like what you're saying is there are times when you're encouraging a particular part of a person to sort of take the wheel in situations in order to function in the world. And then that would be a strategy for engagement, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same thing you would do when you were doing personal work to help them like move towards their own healing. So I'm hearing like this apparently normal, meaning like I can be at the office and someone might accidentally touch me because we can't predict other people's behaviors. And I need to be able to do that without creating a scene at the office or whatever. Am I hearing you right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. So that's where the working with these parts, I just made a statement that is huge because that can take years, depending on the severity of the system and the parts association. It could take years for the person to even identify their own parts and be able to tolerate that they're even there. So working with them is a lot of times I'm working with their parts without them really aware that I'm working with their parts. I had somebody come in who had severe headaches. And so they went to the doctor, went through all of these things, and they couldn't find out why. And so I had them sort of notice their headache. And I said, what part of you is feeling that headache? This is someone who was further along that could tolerate this. And, kind of noticed this little girl that was having these headaches. Her head's getting banged. And so we started processing that with that part. Her migraines went away, right? So cautiously and carefully, because often we want people to be in their body. A lot of people can't tolerate being in their body. It could be dangerous for them to be in their body. I encourage like working out, exercising, getting to know your body without getting too far into it though. The dissociative process is strong enough that it will keep you from the stuff that's intolerable most of the time. If you let the client sort of just start experiencing their body through exercise and movement slowly. Everything with working with complex trauma is slowly. Because you can get into intolerable territory real fast. Believe me, as a therapist, I've stepped in that and it's not pretty.
You said this earlier, it's hidden, right? And it's like, it's really challenging to detect. It's challenging to detect it. I mean, you're a very studied person. It's hard to detect it in somebody. How do we even detect it in ourselves?
It's a great question.
Right? Like how, I'm not trying to like have people like diagnose themselves or anything right now, but like just trying to give helpful examples of like, you talked about the person that may be going through the world a little coolly. Could that also look like, hey, I'm like super calm and collected all the time?
Right.
I've got everything handled. Right.
Yes. I'm laughing because, that's a little introspection on my part because that's exactly what I used to do. I could go through it. I would sit therapists and I'd tell them, so here's what happened and here's how it affected me. And here's how I deal with it. And they're like, oh my God, you got it nailed. You're so, Good for you, John. You got this nailed. I didn't have it nailed at all. The very process of describing it, intellectualizing it, I have a very strong intellectualizing part. His name is Steele, and he's very good at making sure things get managed, right? I wasn't feeling it. As soon as that veil got poked is when it started to hurt. It sort of had to set down the illusion that I had it under control. And this can be damaging, not only for the person, but for people around them when it comes to other people who are experiencing trauma, who are really struggling. And then they see this person, oh, you got it nailed, you got it down. And, you got it stitched together. Some of these people with complex trauma are highly successful because they've got so much everything else dissociated, and they use work, they dissociate into their work and into intellectualism. And even a lot of practices within the mental health community, they encourage this intellectualism. You look at something like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which a lot of people know. I sound like I'm being critical of it. I use it. There are places for it. What it can lead to is, so if I just change my thoughts, if I think my way through this, if I look at what's happening and I just change my thoughts about what I'm looking at, that'll do it. That's all cognitive work. These parts, the ones that are suffering, the protectors, the child, or some call them the exile parts, I think that's a better term for it. They're not experiencing this. So I'm still getting this stuff coming up. And I'm repressing some defense. Well, some other defense is going to come up. And so in a lot of ways, we sort of like encourage this looking like you're okay and get you to function. A highly dissociated person can dysfunction, but can function. It's a Freudian slip, I guess. But it doesn't mean they're healed. It doesn't mean that their life is what it could be. Like when my intellectualizing part steps in, which he is always a challenge when I'm trying to work with parts, and he likes to step in and figure out what's going on instead of listening to the part itself, right?
Well, it's one of the elevator pitches for men's work and embodiment practice in men's workspaces is to help men get out of their heads and into their bodies, because we are so conditioned, and it is so rewarded for us to be really rational and kind of think our way through problems, and sometimes at the expense of ignoring what my heart is feeling, what my gut is feeling, what my primal is feeling, like these other aspects of me. So in the men's workspace, it isn't that we're trying to shut the head off. Like I tell people, I'm like, it's not that the head is bad, but the head is one of, if we think of these sort of four primary like centers, it's one of four. And when you're flying a plane, you turn the entire switchboard on, not just like one quarter of it.
Right.
And that's a lot of what the work that we do that creates the opportunity for people to have a felt experience.
Yeah.
But I think part of what I'm hearing you say, because it's built into all the men's work that I've been trained in, is reminding people that they are in the driver's seat. So people get to decide in whatever practice we might be doing, how deep they want to go, and
absolutely,
so that they have agency. And I've heard this from many people. I'm sure you've heard it too, Eric. That you will revisit practices if you're doing the work long enough. You will do this practice again a year from now, or and watching an evolving process because of experience, context, time, growth, so that likely someone the third time through can have a deeper experience than the first time through, because they were allowing themselves that process of growth in a safe way, and experience in a safe way.
And you hit the nail on the head when you talk about letting them pace it. Right? And even, it depends on, with the stuff that I'm doing, I'm trying to go at a whole different level. So I will look at somebody, sometimes people will go too far. Like they'll push themselves too much and they can reach. So it's like recognizing, okay, the reaction's getting a little too much, and getting people to back up. So it's constantly pushing them forward, pulling them back, pushing them forward, pulling them back, from getting underwhelmed and not doing therapeutic work, or overwhelmed and harming themselves.
Exactly.
So you're right. Like, it's good. Like, you can notice your body as much as you can tolerate noticing your body. If it becomes disturbing, notice it was disturbing, and maybe move on to another part of my body that I maybe can tolerate and start focusing on.
Yeah. This is why in the lineage, there's always sentries. So we'll have the lead facilitator, and then typically with a large group, we'll have at least 4 other men standing in the corner, sort of like holding space for this practice. And those men frequently have worked closely with the facilitator, and it's exactly that. Sometimes it's about attending to a person so that the lid doesn't blow off.
Right.
But they can explore an edge, and these environments are safe places for things that might look a little bit intense, noises, breath, movements and things like that. But making sure that the lid doesn't blow off. And so there's always like this group of people mindfully aware of everyone in the room, which is how then these men can relax. So you lay down on your back and you put a blindfold on if you want, and you start to like do deep breath and some like,
some grounding exercises.
Yeah, and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you feel free to let it come up as much as you can, because oh, well, there are 5 of us who are our entire job is to watch you and make sure you're safe.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just feeling the energy of somebody, you can tell when someone starts getting dysregulated if you do it enough. I have to actually be careful because I will start to dissociate with a client. I can know when they're dissociating because I will start feeling dizzy, and sometimes I'll start feeling sleepy. And that's just my system kind of picking up on this person's dissociating because you can't always notice it. They're very good at hiding when they're dissociating, which brings me back to a real important question you asked, Eric, about how do you know? When you look at something as extreme, the extremes are good to look at because they make it obvious, but it's like you take it and you ramp it down, and it's an experience we're all having. We look at DID as this extreme presentation, but it's the same process. It's just more extreme. I just grew up like this. This is the way I've always been. I don't know that there's anything wrong. Doesn't everybody lose time? Doesn't everybody, their temper gets so bad that they forget and they lose control of themselves?
It's their normal.
It's their normal. So how do I know it's even a problem?
Disassociation is anytime a person starts to disconnect from something that's happening in that moment. Or how else would you describe it? Assuming someone listening doesn't exactly know what that means, like what does that mean?
It's a good question because that's a word that we use a lot, and it's one of those you lose track of what it really means. At its simple level, it's about managing awareness. Internally, managing awareness and managing awareness of the external world so that I can sort of soften what's happening. I can park, it looks like dissociating parts of myself internally so I can function and don't have to feel pain. It can mean something's triggering, so I start dissociating that. So it's all about managing awareness to make it tolerable.
So an example is I'm going through a breakup. I have to go to work. And then there's a part of me that sort of puts that feeling, that sadness or whatever I'm experiencing away so that I can operate at work. Is that a kind?
Yes.
Or does it need to be more special than that?
Dissociating is a wide scale, and it has all kinds of levels of severity. But we do it at driving, and I don't remember my drive when I got home because it's boring. That's a form of dissociating.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like so muscle memoried that you're like, and so you're kind of like off in a story.
Yeah.
Oh, so I know are all stories like those mental movies that we play? Like, are they all some sort of form of dissociation?
Depends.
Okay.
Like it's kind of like how's it being used? I mean, sometimes we do it out of entertainment, right? Like when I'm trying to sleep, to shove everything down, I'll create stories in my head. And that will sort of put everything else aside so I can sleep. That's a form of dissociating. Sometimes I just enjoy doing it and falling into fantasy. And fantasy's great. I mean, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
And imagination. I remember you talking about it on one previous podcast, and it is a powerful tool. And it helps with doing parts work. If you've got sort of a touch with your imaginative side. Kind of lost track of your question there in the middle of it, but yes, it runs the gambit. From that to like things are like I don't remember the last day and a half.
Right, something so terrifying just happened in front of me that I've like kind of forgotten how I got from one place to the next.
Or just day to day.
Yeah. So that's part of the reason why we drop in. So in practice, we invite people to be in a space and then say, okay, your body has arrived, but has your mind, has your spirit, has your heart, right? Like, where are these other things? Can you pull them here so that you can fully be here.
Right.
Right. So very similar to driving down the road and my mind is elsewhere. My body is in this car,
Right.
but my mind somewhere else.
Right.
And the practice is, can I bring the parts to myself to be fully present or
Right.
as present as I can tolerate in this
As you
moment,
can tolerate. Right.
in this moment.
And realizing no matter what, it's just the way our brains function. There's a lot that we're dissociating. Most of the time, we've got a very powerful subconscious. Our conscious can only handle so much load. And so there's a ton going on that we may never become aware of or need to become aware of. But there's always processes going on we're not aware of. Like even right now, sitting here, there's processes going on inside me that I may or may not be aware of that make me do this while I'm talking and move my hand around or look at you or
So would you find it fruitful for people who are listening and interested in understanding these parts of themselves a little better to just ask the question, is there a scared part of me? Is there a sad part of me? Like, is that how you would invite someone into this sort of exploration? Or is there another way that you might invite someone, like, again, not diagnosing them, but, oh, I want to start to become aware of the possibility that this exists for me. How would you invite them in there?
Usually I keep it very, very simple.
Okay.
I'm being a little hesitant because I want to be careful with people that if they have severe complex trauma, that they not do this too much.
Or alone.
Or alone. Yes. Thank you.
Well, so this is where we say, like, no joking, that anyone who has complex trauma should probably have a care team, a trained care team, licensed professionals who understand how to support you through that process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And we could talk about that a little bit too, because that's an interesting process, just finding somebody. But what I will do is I will just say to somebody, well, what are you feeling? And however they describe it, in whatever language they want to use, I was like, can you notice that part of you that's feeling that? And it's that simple. And not to be directive. I try to pull back on being directive, which can be hard, right? Because
not feeding them words, right? So waiting for them to tell you what it is they're experiencing rather than saying, connect to the sad part of you. And then suddenly they're looking for sadness because you planted that seed, right?
It may not be a sad part.
Right.
The part may be sad. And it may not be even the one you're looking at. There may be a sad part that's activating, but it's actually some child part that it's protecting. And it's introducing sadness. And it could be depression. It could be anxiety. It could be whatever it is. And so the fewer words I use in guiding somebody, the less they're doing cognitive work, right?
Yeah, I got to pause you there for a second because we do this check-in practice where we scan through our body and we try to keep it really concise. We're like, look for a sensation and just ask yourself if there's an emotion connected to it. And we try to get people away from story. So the story would be, oh, tightness in my shoulders because I did traps today, right? And instead, tightness and then if there's an emotion. And I like what you just said because I try to let people know there doesn't necessarily it doesn't have to make sense. Like, oh, I'm feeling heaviness in my heart. It's connected to sadness. Sometimes it can be that linear, like that makes sense.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can be like, oh, I feel an uplifted quality in my cheeks, and it feels connected, and it feels connected to anger, and that doesn't. But I think it's because of what you just said, where sometimes there's parts protecting other parts and layers on layers on layers. And so sometimes it's like, just notice what it is without trying to make sense of it or need it to be a narrative that you can wrap your head around, and just like this and this.
Just notice.
Just bare bones. And so what's interesting is it seems so simple. And I try to remind people it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And really hard if you've never done it.
Yeah.
Super hard. So it,
even if you have done it, it's
right. And so letting people know too, the first few times you do a check-in, it may be hard work. It may be hard work to even feel something like tingling or heaviness.
And to build off of that and to talk a little bit about something that you brought up around working with your clients, as a facilitator, we are also trying to find the balance between leading the witness, so to speak, and allowing them to be in their own journey.
Yes.
And so with the check-in practice specifically, the facilitator typically goes first. And what I've noticed is sometimes if somebody is new to the practice, they may latch on to what the facilitator said and use that language in their own check-in because they
Yep.
may not have the language yet,
Yep.
which is great. When I'm facilitating a meditation, my balance is like how much cueing
Mhm.
do I give
Mhm.
to like help people along in their journey as
Yeah.
they're maybe newer or unfamiliar with working with these parts of their
Mhm.
themselves versus not giving enough.
Yeah.
Right, like when I am doing a body scan, I might use the elements and I might say, okay, like notice hardness,
Mhm.
softness, earth energy,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And then, okay, can you notice maybe temperature
Yeah.
and starting to do that? But sometimes that can be I'm giving too much information, and now somebody's like, oh, now I'm scanning for temperature throughout my body. I thought I was just scanning for openness, closeness, and now
Yeah.
like they're in this whole like over processed
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
state, which is my experience,
Yeah.
right? Which is sometimes like, oh, I'm trying to focus on one thing. Like, can I just focus on this one thing? And instead, you keep redirecting me over here,
Over
now
here
over
and
here,
over
and over
there.
there, and over there. And so it's a really challenging balance.
Oh, I face that same
Yeah.
challenge all the time with how much am I guiding and how much am I letting them experience? How much am I engaging with their intellectualizing part?
Mhm.
And how much am I letting
Right.
these
Because
parts come up?
that's what really hit me was that like when you're giving cues,
Mhm.
you're engaging their intellect.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so in our sharing circle, like we go through the check-in, but then we go into a journaling
Mhm.
process. And like we do want to try to keep people in the body, but it's a very cognitive exercise.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so same thing, like as soon as you're giving any sort of facilitation, anytime you're giving any sort of cueing, it's a
Mhm.
cognitive because I have to
Yeah.
process it.
Yeah.
I have to process it with my head.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's automatically going to bring me up into my head.
Well, I mean, but we're making a distinction now between the work that you can do in a group,
Mhm.
the work that you can do in a group of men in a container where you are
Mhm.
getting to know those men. So my teacher does a 4-month container. So clearly you get to start to understand these men differently because you
Mhm.
spend 4 months with them. And then the kind of work that you can do individually. And I
Mhm.
imagine as you develop your relationships with your clients, you can understand more and more how to meet them and how to challenge them in ways that make sense because you're getting a deeper and deeper sense of where they're at and where
Mhm.
they want to go and all that stuff. So it is a trick in group facilitation,
Mhm.
especially when your group is a drop-in group, where I think as a facilitator you have to play a little bit of a middle ground,
Mhm.
and that's the best that you can do. It would be impossible for me to know what every single person in this room
Absolutely.
needs for them.
Yep.
And and I had this as an example. I had this someone asked me about the way, because I teach yoga, the way that I measure out a down dog.
Mhm.
And it was really funny because this person was a yoga teacher too, and they're like, "Well, is that the way you do that right for everyone?"
Mhm.
And I said, "No." I said, "But it's right enough for most people
Yeah.
because I'm not giving you a
Right.
private lesson. And then if
Right.
I'm giving you a private lesson because I'm a nerd and I like that,
Mhm.
I will cue you specifically to you, right? And those cues will get better if I give you 5 lessons and I
Right.
work with you individually 5 times. So I think smart conscious facilitation, as you and I try to deliver,
Mhm.
has to be like as middle as possible because it's never going to be perfect. We're
Right.
never going to be able to meet everyone exactly the way they need in that moment every time.
Right. And it's interesting is there sometimes within the mental health community, there's sort of this unnecessary battle. I'm way overstating it, but between but there's like coaching and programs and that sort of thing, and that's they downgrade the importance of that, and then sometimes I'll hear from coaching and practice people that you're doing with all this woo woo weird subconscious stuff, and the problem is that they both need to come together. I will send my client depending on resources.
I'm a testament of that. I'm like all the modalities, please. Right?
Yeah,
Like
you have to find the ones that work
I'm
for
in
you.
therapy. I'm in group work. I'm in one-on-one coaching. I'm in yoga and other like
Yeah,
everything that I can do to like mix it all together because it
yeah,
all ends up informing each other and helping me through my own experience.
absolutely. And I'll offer someone to a coach or to some other program while they're working with me, depending on the resources. That's usually the biggest problem.
Yes.
Because they need some cognitive work, right? And it frees me to work on other things if somebody's helping them with their coping skills. Like, okay, so when you walk into a room and somebody does this, let's evaluate how you evaluate that situation. That's really helpful. And then, but trying to separate that from now I'm looking internally because I'm trying to do healing work because there's coping, there's healing, right? The ultimate goal of healing is to no longer need the coping. Right? 'Cause I just don't do this stuff anymore, right?
Yeah.
I've had experiences with that and it's great. Like you just don't even, wait, I'm not doing that anymore.
So on that coping versus healing, I want to go back to your example that you shared of your personal experience in therapy,
Mhm.
where you were kind of like checking the boxes, right? You were like intellectual steel.
Yeah.
Steel was your cognitive portion or part,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So Steel was in charge. He's saying, well, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing, and everything's like good on the surface.
Mhm.
So how did you transition from coping to healing?
I became a therapist.
You did the deep dive.
Yes. Yeah. And I started learning the difference between the two, but
Mm.
it's intellectualizing parts are really interesting. And they can often for a therapist be the most, I hate to use this word, but almost difficult to work with because they keep trying, it's their job. Part of their job is to pull you out of what we're trying to dive into. And when you're dealing with parts and dissociating, you're trying to draw awareness to something that by design is designed to not be aware of. Stated that clumsily, but you got it. So it's a huge challenge. And the intellectualizing part will often step in to help maintain the dissociation, right? So how you drift from one to the other is first working with the intellectualizing part. Like, so what are you trying to do? What's happening here? Can you trust me? If we try something for just a second, could you just back up and turn your power down and let me encounter this part? Just step back and take note. Never forcing, because as soon as you force, those defenses become stronger. It's working with them and getting their agreement to work. So, okay, I'll stand back here. You can jump in anytime and protect me if I need it. Just stand right here. And then trying to connect with the part, which that could be difficult because am I thinking this or am I getting this from this part? Or is my cognition coming up with the answer? That can be really unclear. This might be a helpful example. I have a real hard time talking about myself with these things just because as a therapist, you're trained over it. You do not talk about yourself, right? But I had a 15-year-old that was in a kitchen getting berated and rather viciously berated, right? And I'm trying to work with him. So sometimes I'll do exercises like, stepping in as the adult because it's a connection to that younger part. And also that younger part realizing I now have an adult part that I didn't have then, that I do have now, right? And so you try to work with the part to figure out what is it that you need in this moment. And I thought I knew, but it was my adult cognition part that was doing it. It was Steele doing it, not that part. Because I stepped in and stood between this person and myself and just started ripping into him, right? That was the imaginative part that I was doing. It didn't work. And I was like, what's going on? Until I finally was able to connect with this 15-year-old. That's not what he needed. What he needed was to be understood. What he needed was for someone to say, look, do you really think that this is okay? Like, are you seeing me? Do you understand what I'm going through here? He didn't need someone to go in and rip into him. He wanted to be understood. And so my 15-year-old is more mature than my adult part. But it's very difficult to understand, like, am I getting there? And many times it's because something didn't work. Like he's still stuck there in the kitchen.
It requires an incredible amount of awareness
Yeah.
and to get to a point of that. So I heard you say about like how you started moving from coping to healing was you studied it.
Mhm.
You went and became a therapist
Mhm.
so that you could become more aware of what was happening
Yeah.
inside of you.
Yeah.
And so for somebody not, wanting to do the full deep dive into becoming a therapist, like
Mhm.
how can they become aware? Or what are some ways in which they can become more aware through education or whatnot?
It's interesting because sometimes the education itself can be the issue. Like I start looking at things at an intellectual level. Like other people will come in and they say they understand structural dissociation and they understand internal family systems and how all the parts work. And I'm like, okay, now forget all of that, right? And it's like when we were training as a therapist. One of the great therapists said, go out, learn all the techniques, learn all the lingo, learn all of it. And then when you walk in the therapy room, forget all of it because connect with the person that you're working with. And it's doing that. It's like, it's fine to know all this stuff, but forget it when you start working internally. And many times I think it helps to have a therapist or somebody who's trained in working with parts work, doing parts work, because even I have a hard time doing it myself, for myself, because in the process, you're thinking about what you're doing. And so it helps to let the therapist be your intellectualizing part and guide you. So I can let go of thinking and I could just notice what's happening.
You know, I got to say, it's a very different experience as a yoga teacher to take my own class that I am designing in the moment and going into someone else's class and saying, I don't have to think about what we're going to do because you're going to tell me what to do.
Right.
And I only have to be in the experience of doing whatever the thing is. And it sounds like that's what you're saying. So you're in a process where I don't have to be curating this experience. You're going to do that. So I can just work the experience. And I think that's a lot of value, assuming that person feels safe enough.
Yeah.
They're probably, okay, well then I don't, someone else is holding this container. We keep saying that in men's work a lot, like holding the container, safety of the container, because it's so important. You feel safe enough and you trust that I'm going to lead you in a skillful way. You're just, then you can relax and just do. And just be in that experience. It's really powerful. And that's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Yes. And you know, it's fascinating when you talk about doing parts work. Sorry, let me go back real quick to something you were talking about. Like, how do you learn to do this? There is a failing in the mental health community. We like to rely on cognitive work. Not that it's not valid. Like I said, very valid. But it sort of trains people to not look internally, to not look at your subconscious and really connect with it, to think that you are, but you're not really. I think about my own therapeutic experience. This was being encouraged, what I was doing. And what I was doing was not healing myself, even though I looked like I did. I mean, I was successful. I did well. I, met a great guy and got married and all this stuff. But there was a lot of work to be done. And there was a lot of coping going on. And that gets rewarded. What's not happening is, how do we just look at the subconscious? How do we just experience? It's being delivered. I could go on and on about why that's happening. Let's just say it's happening and it shouldn't be. But it is getting better and better all the time.
It's a reflection of the culture as well.
100%.
Right? Like that is our culture. We've referenced it, right? We are rewarded and encouraged to think, to use our brains.
Yeah.
Well, and this becomes then a commercial for the importance of men's work and the work that we're doing.
Absolutely.
Because if at the very minimum, it allows someone the opportunity to look at other parts of themselves. And they, the depth to which they do that is up to them. But can I think about my heart energy? Can I think about my gut energy? Can I think about my primal energy in the same way that I think about my head energy? And just allowing that to be, I remember the first time I heard that, like in men's work, and I'm like, oh, right. Just, can I ask my heart what it wants?
Yeah.
Can I ask my gut what it thinks?
Yeah.
And just that practice is sort of an interesting, and it's a departure from, I have to always shoot right up into the top of my head. And that's where I do all my problem solving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of times that's exactly what you do. And sometimes you do it to repress stuff because in a moment, I can't be accessing this right now. And that's great. It's a matter of learning. Basically, it's like the self, which is a nebulous term, but sort of drives a show. Like, what part do I want to use? What part should be active right now? Including being anxious. I mean, we're supposed to be anxious. We're supposed to be depressed once in a while. It's trying to tell us something. One thing that's interesting we lose sight of is something very basic about who we are as human beings. We're cavemen. And I heard a saying that I thought was wonderful. I wish I knew who said it so I could give the credit to it, but I can't remember. We said we're stumbling and fumbling our way through the 21st century with brains that were designed in the Stone Age.
Yes.
And you have to look back at, so how did this serve us when we were running around just gathering stuff, right? And when you look at, it's not an accident that when you walk into one of these caves that we lived in, there's drawings all over the wall, because that's how we communicate. That's how we learned originally to communicate: singing, dancing, moving, drawing. We're actually really good at letting our imagination come up with body sensations and images that represent something powerful and something very complex. We developed this fancy language skill, and we sort of started repressing that, or we've lost touch with it in a great way. So when I'm doing stuff like, can you notice that part? And what will come up is sometimes they'll feel a spot in their body. Sometimes it's an image that comes up. Often for like the kids, it's an image of them when they were kids, but a protector part may have a certain image, and that image is extremely powerful in communicating what it is. So for instance, steel. The reason he's steel is because the image that came up as I notice him are my bones of steel girders. Because it supported me. It was a steel that held me together, right? And what's interesting is when I work with him and ask him to step back, I use these terms like I'm talking to a separate individual. Clearly I'm not, but it's a conceptualization of these neural networks that helps you connect with them.
It helps to activate the imagination.
Absolutely.
Right? To what I loved hearing you say about like the caves and our initial ways of being able to communicate with each other. It's expression.
Yeah.
Right. It's being able to express ourselves in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I also think that way. And Tim has been really great on this podcast about giving grace and dignity to so much of the human experience, of things that were just trying to keep us alive.
Yeah.
Right? Things that are necessary for our survival. So just hearing you say that we're supposed to feel anxious helps me to process my own anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's a part of my design that helps me survive, helps keep me safe.
Totally.
And it's being able to connect with, so is the anxiety I'm feeling, does it align with what's happening? Right. And then if it does, so what part of me is getting activated, which there's some anxious part, again, simplifying, there's some part anxious part getting activated that it learned from child part that's still stuck in a trauma that's getting activated by something it's seen, because it's not seeing the situation. It's seeing this situation. So I look at a person, you've ever run into a person who just instantly makes you feel anxious or mad or some emotion, because they may just have a beard like dad had.
Yeah.
And it starts activating this kid and then activating the defenses they're trying to protect them. I can't necessarily maybe notice those parts. Sometimes something as simple as notice what's happening and who that is, right? Okay, that's Eric. He's a nice guy. I know him from around. He's not dangerous that I know of. Maybe a little.
You didn't meet me back my drinking days.
He's sober, so he's safe. And sometimes that can, without even like necessarily working on the part, that can help calm this, because it helps subconsciously. You are sort of getting that.
You're naming it, identifying it. Yeah.
That's not always that simple, but it could sometimes lower the intensity of it. But I'm constantly amazed at how, because I will start getting over explaining when I'm working with somebody, and I sort of lose. Their brain knows exactly what they need. Like, I'm not here to tell them what they need or how to fix or heal. They already know. It's a matter of accessing the part that knows. And I'm always telling people, if you have figured it out, you're wrong. Like, that part is holding it. It's dissociated from you. So unless it comes from them, it's going to be wrong. In a therapeutic moment, when I'm hearing something, I'll come up with theories. And I have learned through time, it's like, okay, so I'm wrong. I know I'm going to be wrong here, but maybe I'm close enough that it gives us a place to find out why I'm wrong. Unless we're hearing it from this part. One of the reasons you can tell you're really connecting with a part, if it shocks you or it doesn't make sense. Like, I'll tell somebody, what's that part? What's a bird neck? That doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, good, we're there.
Mhm.
Or this is really confusing. Oh, good, we're there. Right? Because, and I'll tell people, they'll say, I don't know. I'm like, you're right. You don't, but the part does know. So how about if we can make some room? But I'm often amazed. I'll just say to somebody, can you notice the part of you that's feeling it? And the images and everything that come up, it's automatic that the brain will try to communicate this stuff in ways that we can conceive of. It all can seem kind of weird, but it is our brain trying to communicate what's going on subconsciously. It's like dreams.
So when we are in embodiment practices, in yoga practices, things like this, it feels to me like one way that we can start to become aware of different parts that are activating are when we are at getting close to or meeting our edge. You know, and I tell people in yoga all the time, if something comes up for you on your mat, it absolutely comes up for you in other places. And so it's an opportunity to bring some curiosity. So, when I'm getting really challenged, where do I go? Do I go to, I want to leave? Do I start to beat myself up? Do I start to get mad at the teacher? Do I start to are preferences screaming in my head? All these sorts of things. So if you're listening, that's one way I think you could start to become aware of what is operating in different parts of you, because when you are nearing your edge in safe places like a yoga class, you can start to become aware of, this voice is getting louder because I'm in this pose that I don't want to be in, or that it's challenging, or I feel like I'm going to fall over or whatever. And then you can start to pay attention to that voice. And I think that's one of the benefits of embodiment work, bringing our awareness to these things that are operating.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it may not be recognizable the first time, and that's the importance of coming back. Going back to, because my first yoga class, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation with myself. Right? I can have it now after 12 years of practicing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have had that day one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like that spiral. You just keep kind of coming back, but in same place and different place simultaneously. Yeah.
And a lot of times when I'm working with, I'll have certain coaches that I will partner with, and I'll say they have to be given room that they're going to fail. It is not like, and they can look around and they can see other people. I've noticed this group dynamic. And I used to experience this. I'd go to these therapy classes with all these other therapists, and they're having these connected, experiences that I'm like, Steele's like going crazy right now, and I'm not having it. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? Right. Is you're gonna fail at it. If that's what I teach someone in meditation. If you get a millisecond of clarity, that's a success. If you don't get any clarity, that's a success, because you learned something. You've started the process of it. It's not, I'm going to walk in and just enter this place of Zen and everything's going to be great. Or I'm going to instantly connect with these parts.
If you have an expectation that your sit is going to be completely clear-headed, that nothing's going to come up, and that's your expectation every time, buckle in, because it is going to be a bumpy sit. Right. And Tim says this frequently, there is value in the quote unquote bad practice of the practice where, my mind was everywhere. I couldn't focus. I couldn't sit. I couldn't find my flow. I couldn't find my breath. I couldn't sit in the posture. Everything was going wrong, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes those are the most powerful practices.
Yeah.
It wasn't the perfect sit. I didn't sit there like the yogi on top of the mountain, right? My monkey brain was the entire time.
Yeah.
That's just as powerful as the perfect clarity.
And it's noticing that as a defense, and a defense is not a bad word. There's no such thing as a bad part. They are all protective, attempting to be protective. But when the monkey brain starts, instead of shut up, like this is what I get stuck in with Steele sometimes. Dude, we just stop, right? Which is what you not want to do. You don't want to have happen. It's, so what's going on right now? Why is it necessary for this to be? What's going on, monkey brain? What do you need right now? What's happening? And just letting that come.
Yeah. The grace that comes from just a caveman in really great boots,
right?
Walking around, driving around in a really cool Jeep.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm still just a caveman.
Yeah.
Right.
It's often amazing when you go back to this simple survival skills, it explains so much of why we do
And
what we do.
honestly, like just giving myself that much grace, I'm like, my shoulders are already like they're coming down a little bit. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Like I can
Yeah.
give myself more grace.
Oh,
Just a
yeah.
caveman living in this modern world.
Yes.
Right. And I've had a lot of things happen,
Yeah.
good or bad, the way that things are happening, right? It's all gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as we get close to wrapping up,
Mhm.
one of the things that I really thought was valuable in the episode that we had with Jeffrey Schaefer, where we talked about bringing in like tactical skills into the conversation with our doctors.
Mhm.
If somebody is currently in therapy or seeking out therapy, what are some conversations that they can have, whether with their current therapist or with a prospective therapist, around this type of work? What are some active things that they can do as a takeaway?
Okay. So here's something I'm gonna hit that I'm rather passionate about. You might have to reel me in a couple times. Um, when it comes to, and I'm glad you went back to this 'cause I wanted to cover it, is finding the right help, right? From a therapist. Um, given that we do not, in the mental health community, actually have the diagnosis complex trauma. It isn't taught in schools, right? Trauma is trauma, right? And here's how you treat trauma. Well, that's so misguided and dangerous. If you look, like the World Health Organization has complex trauma in the IDC. We decided we didn't want to use that for mental health. And so there's no designation for it. Dissociative identity disorder. I was told in school, you'll be lucky your whole career if you ever see one. I worked in a psychiatric emergency room. I saw them on a daily basis. So picking the right therapist and being able to identify them is unfortunately really difficult and really critical. So you have things like EMDR. I don't know if you've ever heard of EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, but it's a way of processing trauma. And other people walk in and say, hey, I want EMDR because my friend Frank did it and it worked great. And, I had this terrible childhood. And I've had the conversation, okay, it's going to be a while before we get there. And I had one instance where someone got frustrated by that answer because I wanted to do some assessment before we did that and went to another therapist and she says, do you treat trauma? Yes. Do you treat complex trauma is what you have to ask. And even at that, they'll say yes, because they don't understand what it even means. And she went and did EMDR and wound up in the hospital and became suicidal, and it got dangerous. So there is a lot of damage can be done by therapists that don't understand what complex trauma is or how drastically different it is and how it affects people. So how do you tell the difference?
Yeah. So what question do you ask if the question of do you treat complex trauma can lead you down a path that's not necessarily favorable? What question could you ask?
Well, on the good news side is this is getting better and better. And that's a tough question. Like, how do I do that if I'm not an expert and the other person's answering in a different context in which I'm asking the questions? Ask them what training they've had. Have you had training in complex trauma, not just trauma, but complex trauma? Can you assess for trauma versus complex trauma? So if you bring up that complex trauma versus trauma, it forces a therapist to think of this as something different. And you'll kind of get a feel for whether they're dancing around it or whether they really understand what the difference is. And you can ask them, what is the difference between complex trauma and trauma? Right? And look for those three elements. I mean, they'll give all kinds of different answers, but those three elements are there.
Repeated, relational / betrayal, and developmental.
Yes.
Did I get my notes right?
You did.
Yeah. my inner steel is very happy right now.
Good.
No, I love that, because taking a little bit of ownership of our care, or being as empowered, I think that's the right word, empowered in our care by giving ourselves permission to ask questions, right? To get curious with our providers and not just taking what they say at face value, right? I think is a really empowering practice. It's not easy.
No.
I've been in my therapist's office. I've been in my doctor's office, and I've got my notes, and I'm like trembling because I'm like, you're an authority figure, and I don't want to be questioning you right now, but like I really have this really important question to ask you, right? Like it's hard.
Yeah.
But
and you're the expert.
Yeah.
As a therapist, I am not an expert on what's going on with you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're the experts of our own experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so being able to, though, have the, like, I'm I'm wanting to work on a part of me, and I'm trying to bring that to you, right? Like now I'm trying to have a conversation, and I'm going to ask some questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to get an understanding of like, is this going to work for you? Is it going to work for me? And like,
It's okay to say no to a therapist.
Mhm.
I'll encourage people when they come in, if this isn't working, you don't have to justify it to me. I'd like to discuss it. Maybe there's something we can resolve.
Yeah.
But if you just don't feel like it's right, I'll help you find somebody, because it's important just that it feels right.
I love that. I love that.
A client come in because I'm a guy and I work with a lot of childhood trauma and sexual abuse. And I will get men or women who have been abused by a male that will come in. And this is not something that this can be very triggering. And sometimes people will use that as a way of, therapeutically. But sometimes it's too scary for them and they can't tolerate it. So I'll help them find a female therapist. And you're allowed as a therapist. I mean, set aside diversity issues. I don't care what your criterion is. You get with someone who makes you feel comfortable, right? If you want someone of a certain race, it's not because you're racist. There's something internally that makes that feel more comfortable, and that gives you a place to start. Go. You could be sexist. You could be whatever.
Because how are you going to get to a place that you trust this person to hold the container, to hold space for you, so that you can set a part of you to the side that's wanting to stay in the driver's seat to access other parts of you if you don't feel safe?
Absolutely.
If you don't feel safe, you're not going to trust. I don't feel safe. I don't trust that you've got the container. I'm going to stay like in my experience over here. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time being here with us today. We really barely scratched the surface of this topic, and I'm just super grateful. I'm feeling very complete. Tim, how are you feeling?
I feel complete.
John?
Well, I really appreciate it. It was great. It was fun to do.
Good.
Are you feeling complete?
They're all here.
Yeah. For now. Are you complete for now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Then will you take
Anytime if you want
Well.
to cover other areas of this, I'm always happy to.
Or let's close our
Other
eyes.
topics.
Take a deep inhale through the nose. And a soft, gentle exhale through the mouth. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude for any awarenesses, insights, understandings that we may have gained in this shared sacred space that we now release the archetypes and the spirits that we called in. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.